So now that it's 4:30, I'd like to call to order the June 24th BHP meeting.
It's official.
Yeah.
I picked up that one.
So she is not able to be here at the meeting, but I'd like to welcome our new commissioner, Susie Walker, and she will be joining us at our next meeting in July. All right. So now is the time for resident and citizen participation and questions. Would anyone like to speak?
I'd like to ask, I should say ask. One of us is kind of worried that the people that moved in with us over there at Right Clover 2 is carrying guns. I mean, right there.
So
on the
I
side.
just would like to hold for a second of anything involving a particular resident or family. We have a different process for that instead of here at the meeting. Is that correct?
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Just involving a specific tenant, we'd like to hold that in the appropriate section.
I don't know the name.
Okay.
Okay,
I mean, if you wanted to talk about a specific situation or ask a question that doesn't involve the resident, you may
Right.
do that.
Exactly.
So if you want to reframe that,
a person?
well, you could ask a question about policy, or are you asking a question specifically if
All right.
people are allowed to carry firearms?
Yeah, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Okay,
Are we
sure.
allowed to carry firearms in our apartment, outside?
If people
And
have a license,
exposing
yeah.
it?
So just so you know, if someone has a license to carry a firearm, they are, under Vermont law, they are able to carry a firearm at their residence, and they are able to carry it on their person if they have a license to carry. They're not allowed to swing it around, they're not allowed to discharge it, they're not allowed to shoot it, but they are allowed to carry it.
And what if you suspect drug dealings?
If you suspect drug dealing for any resident, then the situation would be to contact the property management, let us know. You may also, if you see something that's an active drug-related issue, then my suggestion would be to, of course, call the police.
Okay.
Yep.
But
But I will, based on the police reports I have received for this property, I have not received any drug-related crime on this property.
okay, people are
Period.
scared. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So I'm okay right now.
Thank you. So we'll move on to reviewing the minutes, and at the end of the meeting, we'll also have another time for resident and citizen participation and questions as well. So I'd like to review the May 2024 meeting. Is there a potential motion to accept the minutes?
A motion that we accept the minutes for May 20th, 2024.
I second it.
Great. Motion accepted. So the staff reports review. We'll begin with the executive director report. Any questions or comments?
Glad to hear about the additional funding for playground received.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, that was definitely exciting, and we're really grateful to the Shapiro Family Foundation for a $20,000 donation to that project, which came after the article, the wonderful articles that were in the Commons and also the Reformer about the playground. And so that was really, really wonderful. And we're continuing to raise additional funds. We're really close to our goal of raising, we have $19,000 remaining. So it's really excellent.
That's great. So a question about that, is there like a due date of when we definitely need those funds by?
There is not. The sooner the better.
Sooner the better.
Because I think that BHOI, Brattleboro Housing Opportunities, Inc., which is our nonprofit, would like to move forward and begin to raise funds for other projects. You know, this was a big capital project of ours, so I think once we close this, we'd like to raise funds for other projects. We have applied for other grants with BHOI, including some funding for food programs for seniors and adults with disabilities, also for a potential dental program, for mediation. So we've received grants for those other programs, which we're in the process of developing the parameters for. But really, if we wanted to start another capital project for resident services, then my suggestion would be to close this out first. I'm also really excited to announce that we received and I think it's, I should have wrote down, $7,500 a year for our family sites for resident service programs for building community. So we'll be rolling out for 3 years. So so we'll be rolling out some initiatives around that. We just received word that we received that funding, and so we'll be giving more information out to the board on the next packet. But more exciting things. But in terms of the playground, we'd like to finish that up so that we can move into another direction next.
Great.
And then I just have 2 updates that didn't make it to my report. The first is that Clover Commons currently we had to do a major repair to the HVAC system. The chiller, a big part of the chiller had been needing repair, and it's something that needed to be sent out. It's a big capital project. It's coming out of our reserves. It had to be approved by Evernorth, which is the part owner of the building. It's a repair that's going to be over $100,000, and so we started this in March. Evernorth approved to go forward with it. It was supposed to take 6 weeks. It's right now being tested at this facility. And so we're hoping to get it as soon as possible. Once we get it back, we'll have it installed. But right now, we're relying on our geothermal system, which brings cold water up through the system. It's not as effective as the chiller for air conditioning. So there's technically not air conditioning, although there is cool air coming through the geothermal. We've been able to keep the building pretty manageable, but for the short term, we've let residents know that if they wanted to borrow an air conditioner or if they wanted to rent an air conditioner for a short term, they can put it in their window. Yep. And then the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention was Thursday night we had I don't know if you remember, we've had some pretty volatile weather in the last couple of days. We had a tree that came down at Moore Court. It was a tree. There's so Moore Court is built on top of a hill, and so there's multiple trees around the property. All of those trees were fine. Those are the trees that we maintain on a regular basis. This tree came from way on the bottom, and somehow when it fell, the very tippity top is what hit one of the buildings, and so one of the buildings sustained some substantial damage to the roof. 2 units were impacted. 1 unit was vacant, and the other one had a family. We relocated the family short-term to a hotel. And so we're hoping, we're getting estimates right now, and the insurance company has come out they're coming out to do an appraisal tomorrow, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. So that was Thursday evening.
That was a big storm.
It was.
That was a big one.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really big tree. It was amazing. So luckily nobody was hurt, which was the biggest concern, but it definitely impacted one family, which is tough. So, so we're working with them to stay at the hotel and then to hopefully get them into some other form of temporary housing until the unit can be fixed.
Any questions? So the property review and property managers report, any questions or comments on that? That's the orange one, right? And
Looks good. Still some 90% on here.
Yeah. We are seeing some improvements. I think the hardest one for sure is Ledgewood, which just we have some really big, if you look, we have, some really huge balances, $26,000, which is just really skewing that number. And if you look, we have had a lot of in-house transfers. So in-house transfers result from either someone being overhoused or underhoused or having a reasonable accommodation to move to a new unit. And that happens, it causes a little bit of a reaction in that when we move somebody to a new unit, then we have to repair we have to turn over their next unit. So the unit that we've turned over doesn't result in a new person moving in. And so we have several in-house transfers over the next couple of months. And so it's going to result in primarily us rehousing people that we already house as opposed to bringing in new tenants.
You're just transferring one family to a different unit in the, like, if it needs less accommodation, say if there's one or two or three or more.
Yep, it could be because of family size.
Right.
It could also be because sometimes a family will have 5 kids and then 2-3 of them will move out, so they no longer need a 5-bedroom apartment. If it could be that, and we do have families that really desperately need those apartments, and so we have to transfer someone in that situation. Or we could potentially have someone who has a reasonable accommodation to move to a different unit for whatever reason. And so if that's approved, then we have to prioritize that. Yep. And so what the reaction of that is that, the consequence of that, I should say, is that it then results in us, we'll spend 2 months turning over one apartment, move someone in who's coming from a different apartment, then we need to turn over the other apartment. We might be transferring someone else into that apartment. So it just creates a little bit of a backlog. So it's not it really results in us not being able to house anybody new while we're dealing with all of these turnovers. Yep.
So if there's a newborn, they have to now have a different accommodation, now they have an addition to the family or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to now move on to the SASH and Wellness Services reports. There was one, and I don't know if you could speak on it, or maybe we can ask Lorelei later.
Mm-hmm.
But in her report, there was like a sentence that she
I
hadn't
saw
finished.
that. I noticed that.
So I
put a
just
little question
wasn't
mark.
sure what that was.
I think she was going to say, sadly, we will only have a half a panel.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't expand it. We only have funding for a half panel.
Okay.
So I think that was where she was talking about the SASH program in Melrose Falls,
yeah.
and that it's making great strides in getting information out to enrollees. The panel has only been on site since February, and then sadly we won't be able to expand it to a full panel.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other comments?
I'm really loving the, if they're easier and easier to read, the graphs, and they really tell a lot.
For the LEAP program.
For the LEAP, yeah. I'm not sure I understand if there's a simple explanation maybe for, I understand the income going up, this is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then why would rent go down?
So it's a great question, and I just want to fill you in. I went over this before earlier today with Matt. Yeah. So Matt is the LEAP coordinator, and he will be at our meeting next month at Moorcourt, and he'll talk a little bit about this. And we talked a little bit about what information would be helpful to share. And so if you have any questions, I would definitely talk to him. If you think of anything in the time being, let me know. But to answer this question, I can answer this. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, this is so the first page, which is number 3, this is a cumulative amount of income that has increased. So since the beginning of the program in January, cumulatively, incomes have gone up by $295,000, which is a huge amount. So really allowing people to make more money without their rent increasing. But the next page, really what we're tracking with this is we want to track to make sure that rent isn't, the goal is the rent, the tenant portion of the rent isn't increasing while their income goes up. However, we want to measure that to make sure, to see what's going on. The reason it may decrease could be that we have some families whose income have gone up dramatically. I mean, really dramatically. Some really, their family has they have increased their income substantially in this program. So it's really showing in that first one. But on the second thing is the last graph, it might not be measuring their rent, but other people's rent, like as people have let's say someone lost a job, or let's say someone moved out of a household, and we do that recalculation for them, then their rent will go down. So right now, really, our rents should not be going up at this point, because we've stabilized it so that under the Moving to Work program, people could increase their wages and they wouldn't have to recertify for their income for at least until the 3-year mark. So, or at least until the next time their cycle was. So we're on a cycle now of only recertifying every 3 years. So during that time, people's income, they can increase their income without their rent being affected. And so that's what that last track is that we're trying to measure it. But there have been some people whose income, their portion of the income of the rent has gone down for other reasons. So it's not necessarily the people whose income has gone up, but it could be other families who have had a decrease in income, because if you have a decrease in income, you're allowed to recertify. That's one of the that was one of the hardship policies that we had to put into it. But if people's income is going up, they don't necessarily have to recertify. They don't have to recertify. They need to let us know so that we can track it, but they don't. But we won't recertify their rent, do their rent calculations until that 3-year mark when we recertify them again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know it's a
So
little
if you were
complicated.
seeing it go up, that might be a sign to you that something wasn't working
Right.
with the
Yeah.
way things were being
Yeah.
calculated. But as this is, it shows that, there's been some up and some down, but basically it's not going up too much. And it might be helpful also just to know that in other ways. I guess we see that on the P&L too, because that's the main source of income for the properties altogether.
Yeah. And so when we saw that it went up was in March, and that's when we had changed the OCAF, when we did the rent adjustments. So there were families at that time, or households at that time, who were paying the market rent. And so because their income was over 30%, they were automatically paying what the fair market rent was. They were paying the max. And so when we increased the rent for the OCAF, their rent went up too, because their income is over 30%. They paid the market rent under rent. They paid the market rent. So at that time, it did go up. So we knew that. We had an explanation for that. But now it really looks like it's leveling off, which is what we want to see.
And that only affected 12 families or something
Yes.
like that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But Matt is really excited to come. He's really been doing a lot of work with this, so it'll be great to have him there to really answer questions and
Great.
talk a little bit about the program and the successes of it.
That's great. Looking forward to seeing Matt in July. Any other questions about the SASH Flash, or the wellness report, or the LEAP newsletter? Okay, next is the Section 8 Shelter Plus Care monthly report. Any questions or comments?
Looks steady.
Yeah. All right, so now is the financial review. So I'd like to start with the March 2024 end of fiscal year 2023-2024 comparable. So this one. Is James here yet? No.
March 2024, you said?
Yeah, it's the consolidated, is this one?
They all look the same.
I see May.
So James is saying he's trying to log in. I don't know if he's in the waiting room.
I see the May, but not March. I have May 31st.
It says ending March 31st, 2025. And then the other one says ending March 31st, 2024. So I think we need that one.
Oh, it's back behind here. Okay, I got it. Aha.
Yeah.
Sorry, wait a minute for James.
I can switch, I can move on to something else and then move back to that.
I just don't know. I'm sorry. Do you know if you're in the right meeting?
I assumed I am, I'm not.
Let me see.
There'd be no harm in closing this down because we don't have anybody else on it right now. If you need to close it and restart it.
Okay.
Let me resend it to you. I wonder if because you came in as a guest, but I don't know why that would be.
Okay. Yeah, this is the same one. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Nice job.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Yep. Got you. Sorry, next to more.
Recording in progress.
Hi, James.
Hi, James.
I don't know if you can hear you.
Oh, my mic is on?
Oh, no. No?
Hi.
There we go.
Hi, James. Can you hear us?
My bad. Can you hear us? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. We're just trying a new technology. Thank you for coming.
No problem.
So we were just going over the comparable for the 2023 to 2024. Is there anything notable you'd like us to know?
There isn't.
The only thing I would point out to the board is the higher than expected contract costs, materials and supplies relating to maintenance for the fiscal year than compared to budget. So it's costing us more than we expect to maintain and turn over the current housing stock.
It's under ordinary maintenance. Is that
Yeah,
right?
is that based on what you just explained with the in-house transfers?
We've had a lot of in-house transfers, and we've had a lot of in-house transfers of big units.
Right.
So 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, things like that.
Okay.
We have started to track separately transfer costs. Billy Joe is starting to track those a little bit so that we can get a better understanding of how much how much not transfer costs, turnover costs are per unit.
And will that be included in our board reports?
I think it's going to take time over time.
Right.
It's not going to show up in James's report
Okay.
necessarily. It will still be this line item, but we're sort of tracking it. We don't have really a
Internally,
choice, but we're tracking it to see so that then we can estimate it a little bit, tease it out a little bit.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Any comments or questions?
I will say one thing, and maybe James, you could talk to this a little bit. We haven't tapped into our reserves. So some of the costs that we have, we could potentially take them out of reserves because they were reserve related expenses, but we chose to just keep the reserves where they are. I know it's a wash, it's like money is money, but we didn't, we intentionally didn't take them out of the reserves account. And we haven't used our replacement reserves in 4 years.
We have not moved any money out of replacement reserve into the operating account for the idea of being a replacement expense, correct?
I think this might come up with the audit, but is this are the reserves a comfortable amount of money for us?
I mean, they're what we're required to pay. So we would of course like to have money left over each year so that we could then add more to our reserves. I don't know, James, did you want to answer that? If our reserves are in a comfortable range?
I'd have to go to a different report, but HUD was only requiring what we're putting in, and I think every year I add 3% to it. I'd have to go and check, see if it's going up 3%. I want to say it's going up 3% every year. So in terms of 146 consolidated. Yeah, we're increasing it about 3% every year. So there's about 600,000 in reserves. Christine probably, I don't recall what HUD was giving us on an annual basis for capital fund. Do you?
What they were giving us before RAD?
Yeah, before RAD, like the capital fund would come in at like a total amount. You wouldn't happen to.
I don't know that often. Yeah, no.
I want to say it was around 300, but I don't quote me on that. So with that said, but again, that 300 might have been after a few. The 600,000 that you have set aside is probably roughly, I would think, close to it. It's at least 1 year worth of money that HUD would have given you for capital improvements, if not close to 2. So if that's how you want to, look at your replacement. You can probably go into the affordable market world and look at what they consider this and that. I don't have any of that data on me currently, but I always tell clients that, if HUD was only going to give you 400 and you have 500 set aside, you have at least 1 year's worth of what HUD would have given you. So being at least ahead or at what HUD would give you is at least a sign that you're keeping up to what HUD would have given you. If HUD was to give you 600 every year and you only had 200 set aside, then I would say, no, you don't have a large enough reserve based on what HUD would think you would need based on your type of units, age, this and that. So the fact that you're probably ahead of what HUD has projected in the past to give you, I would say that's a good sign. And as Christine had said, we have not yanked any of that. But again, even if we take money out of that bank account, we're just putting it in the other operating accounts. So it's just a wash between bank accounts. It's really not worth even discussing. What I would say is that, you have $600,000 if, say you needed $400,000 to replace a roof or $500,000 to replace windows. So that's the way the board should look at it. And I would say as long as we continue to add to it, you have what I would consider at least a healthy replacement reserve at the current time.
Yeah. So we've been trying to we've been taking money out of our operating reserve for some of these capital improvements, and so that we don't. As James said, it's a wash, right? It's just the same, money is money, but it's just that, we've been taking it continuously out of the operating reserves as opposed to the replacement reserves. For the RAD properties, for the tax credit properties, it might be a little bit different. We have touched, for RCC, we've had to go into the replacement reserves, but they are two different pots of money. But from what James is talking about, we're really talking about the 4 RAD properties, so making sure that we have replacement reserves for those properties. And then we're still getting the capital fund money specifically for Melrose, which we're using for the Melrose projects,
Yeah.
whether it was the flood mitigation or the potential, renovation of the property. So, yeah, I mean, I think that right now, as we're planning out some bigger projects, we're going to continue to take some of the funds from our operating reserves as opposed to that. So we might see even next year a little bit of a dent, but in the grand scheme of things, we would like to have a little bit of money left over. However, just the costs have been so much higher than what we've had before, and our properties are really aging. We have some really old properties that it's more expensive to maintain. So.
And that was the first time in 4 years that we've had to dive into those reserves this heavily.
We haven't gone into them at
not
all.
yet.
Not
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we haven't gone into them yet.
Sorry.
Nope.
And then just to clarify, the tax credit replacement reserves, those are somewhat controlled by Evernorth. So you have control of your own when it comes to the 4 RAD properties, but when it comes to RCC 1 and 2, AWR, it works the same kind of way. It's just the fact that, again, those projects might be tighter on operating funds, so therefore we'd want to go in and take the replacement reserve at the time, specifically on AWR, but that AWR doesn't even have any replacement reserves. But so it's one of those things where if we, had to replace a roof or fix something, we'd have to, ask Evernorth. Evernorth would say fine, then we would just move the money. But in terms of the RAD, because they're owned by us, we have so much more flexibility. It's take it if you want, don't take it if you want. It's slightly different.
So for the tax credit properties, anything that's not on the budget and anything that comes out of replacement reserves, I have to apply to them to be able to do that. And then anything over a certain cost number, which I believe is $5,000, then I also have to apply to them, and they have to approve it. And those budgets are very tight, for the operating of these buildings. There's not a lot of place for ambiguity, to make those other decisions. It's really just to do the bare minimum of maintaining the properties, making sure that, the snow is done, all of the other pieces. So we really, anything above and beyond that, we need to apply specifically to them.
So for the next comparable, the May 1st to March 31st, 2025, right?
Yeah. March to May, yes.
Yeah.
So they have I sent them the May comparable, James. I didn't.
Yeah. The May one is only 2 months in. So with that said, I would caution the board that the numbers are significantly worse than budgeted, but as we did not budget for the $107,000 for laundry equipment, and I believe you bought a vehicle, correct?
Right, the truck.
So if you back out those expenses, we'd be almost right on budget. The whole agency. So the laundry equipment and the truck were not part of the original 2025 budget. Therefore, it looks like we're doing worse than budget, but if you exclude those, we're about right on budget. What we expect.
So originally we had talked about putting the truck in last year's and then we pushed it out to this year. So it will impact this budget. We're hoping to make up hopefully some of the difference in the next couple of months. And the laundry, again, was more of a capital need. I mean, those were long overdue. And so instead of taking those out of our reserves, we're still taking them out of the operating.
Okay.
Yeah, again, like Christine just said, we can take the $100,000 out of the capital reserves or out of the replacement reserve on the RAD projects to replace those funds. But in terms of reserves overall, you've used that money for those items.
So the net income loss before debt service for 2020, I guess I'm projecting is what, $72,349 for 2025? You're projecting that?
I'm sorry?
You're projecting for 2025, the net income loss before debt service for non-routine expenses is higher? Is that what you're projecting, or?
What I'm saying is that if you actually look at the comparative for May on the consolidated app,
Right.
Right at budget.
Okay.
right, it says -12 on the budget line, it says -10.
Yes.
So we're right there. And then we go below and you get the laundry equipment and the vehicle that then throw us worse than expected down at the bottom, 147 compared to 41.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, like I said, whether we decided, take $110,000 out of the replacement reserve and put it in our operating reserve, that's a call for the board, Christine, whatever the board would like. But the laundry equipment and the vehicle would be what HUD would expect you to take from the replacement reserve.
Any other questions? I just saw that, I remembered that we did increase the budget for the legal expenses this year, quite a bit. And however, there's been a lot of those cases solved, right? So we may not reach that budget,
Hopefully not.
but hopefully,
Yeah,
but we have it there just in case.
We did allocate 50,000 specifically for the RAD properties,
Right.
and then also for RCC. I know we increased it for Red Clover Commons. Those we had very high legal costs at some of our tax credit properties last year and the beginning of this year. So I'm hopeful. I've really been watching. We've been really tracking our legal costs, and I can add some of that to I can add some information to the next. You have the cost, but to tell the cases, we've really decreased the number. However, we still have a couple of cases for cause that we really, that are still going forward.
Okay.
And so hopefully we can minimize the costs after that. I've seen a decrease in legal action, a considerable decrease for non-payment, which has been really great.
Yeah.
So I think that's a couple of things. I think it's the recertifications being every 3 years, so people are able to earn a little bit more money. And then also just, I think, after COVID and the pandemic, there were a lot of reasons why people fell behind on their rent. And so we really saw that it seems like we're catching up to that. So I'm hopeful that our legal costs will be decreased.
Yeah. Thank you. So the next would be our tax credit audits. We received one for Red Clover Commons 1 and 2 and the A.W. Richards housing. So is there any questions or comments of the Red Clover Commons 1 and 2 audit, financial statements, tax audit? Anything notable you'd like to point out, James?
No, I looked them all over with as I got them. They're all clean opinions from Otis, so the board should be happy about that. Management has done their job. No, they're basically at this point you certainly have 2 mature tax credits and an RCC2 being in year 2 or 3, which is going to just generate, into a mature tax credit. So I wouldn't expect these audits to be very difficult for the auditor. Is very difficult for management. And I wouldn't, and the board shouldn't expect anything to ever pop on these unless something goes wrong. But I don't expect that to ever happen. These should be clean every year. They should, take a few weeks to do, and that's about it. But since management's doing so well with them, that's how I would expect them to go going forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and we're just beginning our BHP audit, which is for fiscal year 2023 3, 2024,
Okay.
which ended at the end of March. So we're just beginning the process of completing that, and the auditors are coming out in August to be here in person. So yeah, so you should have that probably, hopefully, in the fall.
Okay. Great.
Great job.
And then any comments on the A.W. Richards tax credit? Okay, thank you very much. So James, I was gonna just thank you for being here. If you had any questions for us or any comments, otherwise.
No, I mean, is there anything the board would like before I, take leave? I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, I will speak to the board later.
Great, thank you, James.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
You too. Thanks.
Okay,
And thank you, David Wright, for being our
moderator.
owl specialist.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Thank you.
Took a little while. If we could start the meeting over, I could do a little bit better.
Well, next time. Thank you. So check signing assignments for July, I have Commissioner Green. For August, I have Commissioner Green again. And then for September, I have Commissioner Wright. Okay. So projects in progress, the Melrose Terrace redevelopment. Anything notable that you'd like to share?
Well, and I don't, I'll be honest, I apologize. I don't remember if we talked about this. I think we did, that we received a congressional, Becca Ballant approved a congressional earmark for 1.5 million, or 1.3 million. So that's very notable, which is exciting.
Yeah.
We also received our letter of map revision, which is called a LOMAR.
Okay.
From FEMA, which was great. We had submitted that a while ago, so it was great to see that come through. We are still we're still sending lots and lots of information to FEMA and also the resiliency grant. So we should be getting some money back. We're going to be reimbursed for some big purchases, so we'll be seeing that in the operating budget in the next couple of months. But for the time being, Michelle and I have met again with our development team, and we did talk about several key areas, primarily that really the first step before, we don't want to go too far, but we really do need to start thinking about office space for BHP. And so I've started to work on a little bit of a sort of survey for staff, and M&S contracting consulting gave us a little spreadsheet to use potentially to just identify what the needs are of the team and to how to measure them. So that was helpful. Okay. Other than that, we're going to be applying for additional funding at this point once we get some of the preliminary plans approved, and we did get some plans just sent last week, and so I don't think I've gotten to send them to you yet, Michelle. They came late last week, so we're going to be reviewing those as well. Is there anything else you can think of before I jump into the floodplain?
No, I think that's about right.
Okay. So the LOMAR, I thought this would be helpful to look at this map. It really shows the floodplain area. So if you look at the red area, that is what the floodplain is now under the LOMAR, which is substantially different than what it was before, because it used to go right through the property. And so now, if you look at the green area, this is the 100-year flood area. That just sort of circumvents any area where we have any potential housing. And the blue area, which is the 500-year flood, is you can see that that it does enter into some of the property a little bit. So that's something that that we'll be talking about with the architect, and making sure that those buildings are really secure, and that they're that we in case there is flooding there, that we can prevent that. But for that to be only in the 500-year floodplain, that's still land that we can still build on for affordable housing. So that's really, really excellent, good news.
Great.
Did you have any questions about the map?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
And I think that helped. The engineer sort of, when we got the original one back, I was like, I don't know how we're going to explain this to the board. It was really complicated. So the engineer went in and they showed us what FEMA had worked off of and sent that, and it seemed much easier to read based on the colors. So I'm glad that worked out.
Yep. Great.
We'll have the addendum piece.
Yeah.
So HOTMA is stands for Housing Opportunity Through Modernization and Act, and basically it's an act proposed through HUD to streamline some of the administrative burdens, but also the burdens on residents. And that will be the long-term goal. The short-term goal is that it's a little bit of a heavy lift because we have to make a lot of changes to our administrative plan. And so we've been in the process of that. I just wanted to give you a brief outline of what HOTMA was so you have an understanding of what it is. There's nothing you need to vote on today, but I wanted you to know what's coming down the pike.
Mhm.
So this is a timeline of like when, so for August 8th, we'll have to publish our first notice of changes. So every single change in our administrative plan, and just so you know, this only affects our RAD properties. This isn't for the tax credit properties, but it does also impact our Section 8 program.
Right.
So it will impact our CC2 because we have project-based Section 8 vouchers in that building, and it will affect all of the RAD properties in our entire Section 8 portfolio. And so we'll be publishing a notice of all the changes. The board will get a very detailed outline of every change for the administrative plan. And we'll have to open it up to public hearing, which will be in September. Last day of comment will be in October, and then it will go to the board for approval in October.
Okay.
So, and then we'll have to submit it to HUD and then implement it starting January 1st. The good news is it's the same exact timeline as our MTW. So when we do the public hearings, we'll
Perfect.
just open one public hearing, close it, and then open the other.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
That makes sense.
Slides right in there. Excellent.
Great. I skipped over SASH for All pilot
okay.
project, but was there anything for that?
yeah, only that it did, so good news, it did make it into the 2025 congressional earmark for Bernie Sanders.
Oh.
So to not only fund the program, but then also expand it for 2 more panels.
Great.
So that's really good news. We have funding through this year, so that's excellent news. And outside of that, there's no real other updates. We have the same staffing. It's primarily funding we've been working on.
That's big.
So that's good news.
Yeah.
Excellent news.
Great. All right. I know we talked about Brattleboro Housing Opportunities Inc. a little bit, but is there any other comments or questions involving the budget or financial statement for BHOI?
So we've been working on creating new financial statements that are going to be much more detailed. Now that we are getting all these additional grants, we're going to need to have more line items. So you'll be seeing that in the next month or 2. Just wanted to put on your radar.
And for public record, we're still recruiting.
We're still looking
members.
for people to be on the Brattleboro Housing Opportunities board. That board is primarily a board whose main task is fundraising for the resident service programs.
Great. So,
And if anybody's interested, they can reach out to Brattleboro Housing
yeah,
Partnerships and we can point you in the right direction.
great. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to move on to board business. Christine and I had talked about doing an employee celebration of some sorts. So I wanted to bring it to the board to see what we could come up with.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
What has been done in the past?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing, what we normally would.
Well, let's think.
The
So
last thing we did was the holiday party.
we had the holiday party. Every
Wow.
year we do have a holiday party for
Yeah.
staff. That's a pretty big event. And last summer, because we hadn't had anything as a group for so long because of COVID, last summer we went on kind of a big trip where we went on a boat cruise up the Connecticut River. We went down to Hadley and we took a boat up the Connecticut River and then had lunch afterwards, which was really enjoyed, right, David?
Absolutely, I liked it.
Yeah, it was really fun. So I do think anything that gives the staff an opportunity to spend time together that's separated from work, very separated from work if possible. The hard thing about the boat cruise was there were some people that couldn't go because we needed to have a couple maintenance people stay behind, and that was sort of too bad because I think it would have been a lot more fun to have everybody there. So I think it would be nice if we could build in some sort of way of if we did something maybe more locally, and that way if there's an emergency, it's not like they have to drive an hour to get to it.
Or they could rotate out.
Or they're
if
stuck
they
on a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need suggestions, is there a deadline or something? Because I have a few ideas that might be inclusive for a lot of people that are local, like Scott's Farm, do something up there. They always have a crepes night. They always got something great going on up there. Oh, and the retreat farm. They just opened up. That's another venue for them to see. I've been to the new location. It's phenomenal. That means something like that could probably be advantageous. We're happy for it.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, it's a great idea. And I think just wondering how much the board would want to be involved in it. If you would want to actively host it, or if it's something that you want BHP to plan and then be invited to.
I think we should host because they've done so much. I think they deserve our gratitude in that sense, and I think we should be, that type of servitude and giving back to what they've done would be greatly appreciated, and it shows the appreciation to them if we're present at that and also doing that.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah. So is that something we could do a little subcommittee for?
Sure.
Or
That would be great.
yeah. Great. Anyone like to volunteer for the subcommittee for?
I would definitely volunteer. I've done hospitality and
Great.
down at the Strolling with the Heifers, helping out down there too. And we have the 4th of July parade. I might be volunteering for that as well too for the town. So I definitely would love to coordinate that.
Great.
I help.
Great. Awesome.
Doing a lot of those.
And last year, what we did was we got a few ideas, and then we did a survey, and that went, and so that might be something depending on what you want to do. That's
And they
another
can
idea.
vote
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm happy to help with that if you want me to help with.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
I've done, like I said, I've done that type of work, when they had the Strolling with the Heifers, I helped out
Yeah.
with it. And so, that definitely is up in my line. So any help or anything I can give 3,000%, I'm there.
Great. Great. Thank you.
I do it all the time too, so just do it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. And then we'd also like to do a board retreat soon. A chance for us to get together and build on skills and just get more connected as a board. So we'd like to propose that for when?
I think we're thinking September.
I think it was September. So yeah, we just would like to propose that separate from the monthly meeting.
Now back to that again with what Michelle was saying. Normally, what was the regular type of gathering that you've had for something like that type of retreat in the past? before? Did you guys meet somewhere like a hotel or?
So
Yeah.
the one that I went to was virtual because it was in the middle of the pandemic. So we just did a virtual retreat. But
Okay.
before that,
Yeah, we would meet and we could meet in, you know, in person somewhere. And I think coming up with like an agenda, like we wouldn't want to talk about anything that would be, you know, which would, you know, because we have an open meeting rule
Right.
for us, we couldn't talk about board business, but we would be talking about maybe doing some activities around development or, you know, just coming up with like, you know, how we want to, you know, better ways of engaging in running meetings, maybe learning about how to better, you know, maybe if you had ideas about board packets or, you know, I'm just throwing stuff out, but coming up with an agenda of the things that we want to work on. But also primarily just thinking about, you know, how to connect with one another and learn about each other's, you know, skills and, you know, maybe just learn an opportunity to spend more time together
Someone
as
like
a way of
the
connecting.
co-op. You can probably limited rooms or something.
Yeah.
We do have a window.
Oh, they got a lot of room there. Yeah, I used to rent it out.
Yeah, and I mean, there's probably a lot of spaces that we
Oh,
could
yeah.
get to do that. You know, we have space here that we could do it in. We
Yeah.
have space upstairs.
Memorial Park.
You know, we could do it, Memorial Park, yeah.
So we'll just want to start thinking about what types of skills we want to build on and activities
Yeah.
we could bring. And Susie Walker will be fully orientated or mostly orientated by then, so we can bring it up at another board
Yeah.
meeting as well.
I like to have her with that. I know Susie's great. Yeah. Turning point, yeah.
So we don't have a board meeting in September, right? I mean, in August.
August we
Probably
take a month
July.
off. Yep. So our next meeting will be July 22nd, and then the one after that will be in September.
Right.
Yeah,
We have
and thinking about
July.
also like if you wanted to bring in a facilitator, we could do that as well. You know, part-time, you know, someone to help us run it. We've had that in the past. That's kind of helps. That way we don't feel like we're, you know, working in that way. You know, so that we can really
right.
be present.
We had someone join us for the virtual board retreat last
Okay.
time when working on our strategic planning. Yeah. Okay, so I would need a motion to adjourn.
A motion we adjourn.
I'll second that one.
Second,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.